And welcome back to the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis. Next to me, as always, my beautiful co-host, Laraib. As we are here to break down week 3 of the NFL season, Laraib. Another crazy week of twists and turns. We only have 3 teams without a win this NFL season. And some of these teams are just shocking, the results so far. A lot of disappointments, a lot of pleasant surprises. So much to get into, so much to break down after another insane week of NFL football, Rob. How are we feeling going into this preview or
Yeah, we
review?
thought the upsets would cool down after a weird week two, but they just continued, Lewis. And I don't want to crown myself right here, but I predicted a lot of these weird games. Let me go ahead and just pull up the picks for you here. And my Indianapolis Colts showed out, my Green Bay Packers showed out, and my Minnesota Vikings showed out. And that's how I got the dub in week 3. And of course, with all the big upsets, we still miss on both of ours.
Right, exactly. And you know what? I don't feel too bad about any of my picks, really. You went for the route of who's the desperate teams, who needs it. And I undersold that. Tennessee just sucks. Jacksonville, you picked them. That was like the only pick I felt good about because you had to pick Jacksonville. But man, Dallas just a lot of duds on that list right there, Larob. But I'll give you that. You needed that week to make it seem competitive. You know what happens to teams who go down 0-3 in the picks? Not very good, Larob. But let's go ahead and go to a team that did fall to 0-3 last night on Monday Night Football, Larob, and that was the Cincinnati Bengals at home falling to the Commanders, 38-33. And first off, just as an LSU fan, that was such a fun game watching two of my Heisman quarterbacks duke it out and just a really, really cool game to watch. It was a fun game as well, really came down to the end. Just amazing plays by both quarterbacks. But ultimately, one team had to win, one team had to lose, and it was Jayden Daniels pulling out the win in Cincinnati. And I was conflicted. I didn't know which way I wanted to go, but ultimately falling down to 0-3, Larab, is almost a certainty that you miss the playoffs. There's only been a handful of teams that have ever done it. Cincinnati losing all of their games by 6 points or less. Um, I'll let you start here, Larab. You want to go Jayden Daniels Commanders, or do you want to start with the Bengals?
You have to look at the Bengals in this situation with all the offseason drama that they had with Jamar Chase. And coming to the season, they had a really easy schedule. And now you're 0-3, Lewis. No 0-3 team has ever made the freaking Super Bowl. And this Bengals team does not give you any hope. The offense looked good. They put up 28 points. They were stalling out a little bit here and there, but it was really the defense that surprised me. And it was Jayden Daniels with his legs and with the ground. I think Cliff Kingsbury heard some of that noise about just short dink and dunks and only having Terry McLaurin on one side of the field. And they just decimated this Bengals defense. And I do not know how it gets any better for the Bengals from here.
Yeah, the biggest concerning part is like you mentioned last night, no punts, no turnovers. Their only real gaff on their team was an Evan McPherson missed field goal. But besides that, Joe Burrow played a pretty good game. Pretty flawless if you could say that. Yeah, a few drives stalled out, and he didn't look maybe 100% like the Burrow we know, but he still balled out. Like, it was still a very good game, a game that they should have won if their defense came to play, and they simply didn't, Laura. And that's the curious case about this team so far. Week 1, offense didn't show up. They lose at home to the Patriots. Week 2, offense and defense showed up, but they just, lost a really tough game at Kansas City. And then week 3, offense shows up, defense stays at home. And it's just like, when are we ever going to get a complete game from this team? And going into this season, like you mentioned, the vibes were just completely off. The Jamar Chase contract was kind of hanging over. Trey Henderson demanded a trade. And it was just weird. They're selling TVs and stuff in the stadium.
I would
And
like
the
one.
owner is very frugal. $80 for a 60 inch. Come on now, Laura. Um, but it was just a really weird vibe around the team, and it seemed like that malaise has carried it into the season. And 0-3, And the reason I really like the Bengals going into this season was because of this schedule. You had the Patriots and the Commanders at home. You play the Panthers next week. And then in your next few games, you have the Giants. You have the Browns. I mean, you have all these should be gimme wins. And if you could just, split some of the tougher games, you're looking at a 12-5 schedule. Do I think the Bengals are done? No, I still do not. Now, it's are they on life support? Yes. One more loss to a team that's awful the rest of the season, you're done. So you have to get your stuff together and button it up against some of these teams that you should be able to beat. And in terms of the division, it's kind of crazy, Laura. FanDuel still has the Bengals as not as the division favorites, but as a higher Super Bowl favorite than the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, who are undefeated, which is just crazy to me. But obviously they're not going to win the division. Their best bet is to get in through the wild card. But good news for them, not a lot of teams in the AFC really looking that strong right now, like we thought. Chargers lose Justin Herbert. 3 AFC South teams just look putrid. And, in terms of the Raiders don't look good. Broncos picked up a good win. And then the AFC North, the Browns look pretty shaky. So there's room there. There is room. AFC East, Dolphins, Tua is out. There's definitely room for this to be for the taking. They just need to get their stuff together and go get it, Laraib.
Yeah, and then let's flip it on over to the Commanders. I don't think this is a game that any Commanders fan will ever forget, let alone any LSU fan. Just that teardrop pass to Terry McLaurin on the sideline to just put that thing away. Outstanding performance by him. And Cliff Kingsbury, like I mentioned earlier, I think he heard some of that noise, really got this offense to start stretching down the field. When you have a guy like Terry McLaurin, that's what he's there for, to really back up that defense. And when that defense came into this game and said, we're playing against a sorry ass guy, he only likes to check it down. And they really came out and showed those
Like you
Bengals
said that.
defensive backs a thing or two out there. And now, where do you go from here as a Commanders fan? You look at the season where you thought, we're rebuilding, we don't have the greatest defense, but with Jayden Daniels in, is this a playoff team potentially, Lewis, in the NFC?
Potentially, yes. Now, their schedule is tough. Obviously, you still have 2 games against the Cowboys, 2 games against the Eagles, who historically you haven't fared very well against. But, they still have games. They have the Panthers on the schedule. They play the Giants another time and the Titans. I mean, I don't know, because with Jayden Daniels playing like this, you would have thought at Cincinnati was an automatic loss. But, he just the magic he was able to display, it seems like their ceiling just rose tenfold because of the performance we saw last night. And the thing about Jayden Daniels, which was kind of weird to me for the first 2 games, including the preseason. Well, no, he did have one play in the preseason, but his specialty, especially in LSU, was the deep ball. He had a beautiful deep ball that he put a lot of touch on, and it was kind of like the Russell Wilson moon balls from back in the day, where it just so high in the air, it just falls into the receiver's breadbasket. And we saw that, like you mentioned, to Terry McLaurin twice in the game. And that just unlocks a whole element to this offense. So their defense still is very, very bad. Like I mentioned, no punts, no turnovers. That also means that your defense was forcing no punts and no turnovers. Um, but it was just, I don't trust the secondary whatsoever. They did a pretty good job of stuffing the run, which was a big concern of mine entering this game. But that secondary was just getting torched last night by the Bengals. So we need a lot of work to be done. But overall, though, I'm extremely impressed with Jayden. It by far looks like the most poised and most ready rookie quarterback in this draft. And we'll get to it later. Potentially the favorite for offensive rookie of the year so far, Laraib. But anything else you wanted to hit on that game
Well, he kind
specifically?
of, if the Bengals end up winning this game, I feel like Bo Nix is the rookie quarterback that we're talking about today. But Jane Daniels just came out and really closed the door on that Bo Nix era, Lewis. But let's go ahead and move on to the other Monday night game where we had another 0-3 team in the Jacksonville Jaguars who looked awful, just plain awful. Trevor Lawrence looked awful. The coaching looked awful. Press Taylor, offensive coordinator for the Jaguars, you need to go. Doug Peterson, you need to go. I mean, just absolutely horrendous from and in that defense. who I thought could put up some sort of fight against Josh Allen, and those Bills looked porous. I mean, it just an awful game by the Jaguars. We're talking about a team of the Bengals who are in trouble. The Jacksonville Jaguars are in more trouble.
Rob, the Jacksonville Jaguars might be one of the worst teams in the NFL. And this hurts me to say because I do like Trevor Lawrence. I think he is a good quarterback. I still think he is a good quarterback, but he's in one of the worst quarterback situations in the entire NFL. Doug Peterson, if he ever really was good, is definitely not anymore. Press Taylor, like you mentioned, ass. This defense is just garbage, garbaggio. And at some point, Trevor, like, you have to do something. I still think you're good, but like, damn, bro, like that interception you had, the overthrow just right over Brian Thomas's head to Damar Hamlin getting his Make-A-Wish interception. I mean, that was just an egregious miss right there. And a game that was still in the books. Like, you still could have had some sort of comeback, Laura. And we see all these 0-3 teams like the Panthers, are all 0-2 teams like the Panthers, these other the Giants, just clawing their ways to these desperate, gritty wins, even against good teams. And meanwhile, this freaking Jaguars team just dies in the field, lifeless. And now that flight back to Jacksonville is just going to be awful. And guess what? You get to go at a pissed off Texans team next week. You're staring 0-4 right in the face, Laraib, and this is just a really, really bad look for Jacksonville. You picked them as your upset, so I want to know how you feel about how this went down.
Well, originally, you were gonna pick them as your upset, but you pulled
Definitely.
the Uno reverse card on me and pulled them. This is just awful. Now I have to agree how they are playing. They're playing like a bottom five team in the NFL, and I just guess that Evan Ingram being out for Trevor Lawrence is just such a big thing that we just didn't harp on as much because I guess that's just his guy, his safety guy, and if he's not there, he's gonna turn into a freaking pumpkin. But let's flip it on over to the Bills, Lewis, who look like they are the team to be in the AFC right now. I'm not afraid to say that the way Josh Allen has been playing through 3 weeks. I think 8 or 9 total touchdowns, 0 turnovers. I think that's the first time he's ever done that in his career. They are playing really, really good football. And of course, Joe Brady unlocked that running game, and it looks like we're off to the races between the Chiefs and the Bills in the AFC.
Yeah, not much to say here about the Bills, Larob. I agree with you. They look like one of the most complete teams in the entire NFL. And Sean McDermott, just huge credit to him. How he's able to lose all these defensive pieces year after year. And it seems like, man, this is the year the defense is going to suck. This is the year the defense is going to suck. But his scheme, what he's able to do to put players in the right places and to get the best out of his talent. And despite the injuries, despite Matt Milano going down, despite, no Taron Johnson, no Tremaine Edmonds, he's still able to have a top 5 defense year in, year out, and just a testament to him. And you pair that alongside this MVP leader right now and Josh Allen, you're looking like one of the best teams in the NFL. So huge credit to the Bills. But I just want to say, Laura, in terms of Jacksonville, their situation not necessarily as dire. The only team with a win in your division was the Colts this past week, and still have some games that's on the schedule. But Rob, they need a win at Houston next week if they want to prove to me anything that they're a legitimate team. Because I still have hope that Trevor Lawrence can bounce back. But man, this team has a lot of work to do. But yeah, you mentioned it. Huge shout out to the Bills. But let's go ahead, Larob, and let's move on to our main meat and potatoes subject of the week. We are bringing back an oldie, but still a goodie, cap or no cap. And for those who don't know exactly what I'm saying, it's just basically true or false. So I'm gonna posit some questions, and Laurent has some questions for me to him, basically giving him a statement. He's telling me cap or no cap, Laurent. So are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Starting off, Laurent, the Dallas Cowboys fall 28-25 to the Ravens, but really it was never that close. A serious comeback at the end, but that was just classic Ravens. The Cowboys at 1-2, who have gotten shellacked at home in their last 2 games, will miss the playoffs, Laurent.
I am saying no cap on that. Let me tell you some of the games that they have upcoming. The Lions, the 3-0 Steelers, the 49ers, Who do I have? The Eagles twice, of course, the Texans and the Bengals. That is a gauntlet of games. And when you cannot run the ball and you cannot stop the run, what happens to you on Sunday is going to happen every Sunday. Derrick Henry is going to run all over you. Zach Moss is going to run all over you. Joe Mixon is going to run all over you. Saquon Barkley is going to run all over you. And this team just doesn't look like they are ready to play football. For the past couple of years, the Cowboys, they lose some pieces, they have some off-season drama, but they always come in ready to play, especially at home. And it just does not look like that this season, especially that defense, especially Micah Parsons, who loves to go on Bleacher Report podcasts, who loves to do his own podcast. But when it's time to play on Sunday, he is just not there. He's a premier pass rusher, Lewis, but he has not stepped up his game at all to defend the run at all. And it's just, this defense looks porous. And Dak Prescott, of course, he's going to get his garbage time touchdowns and yards, but they just have not come up and played football this year, Lewis.
Laura, one of the biggest things I was trying to hit on in terms of predicting future outcomes, what are the consistencies you need to look for? One is quarterback play. Well, guess what? Dak has played pretty well through 3 weeks. I'll give him that. A lot of these games now, can he clean up a few plays here and there, some bad interceptions? Yes, he has not played perfect, but you know what? He is doing the best he can, given the fact that what is the other thing that I've been harping on? Trench play, offensive, defensive line play, and both of that has been an extreme problem for the Cowboys. Now, another thing is just this team is used to playing with a lead, and whenever they fall behind in these games, and the other teams could just force the run game, the defensive linemen like Micah Parsons can't really get off and get their sacks in, and then the Cowboys, we haven't seen them be able to run the ball effectively at all. They don't have a single rusher on the team with over 4 yards of carry so far this season. Rico Dowdle probably looks like the one guy who has the most juice in this offense, but he hasn't been able to get going whatsoever. And it just seems like it's so hard for them to run the ball, and they're getting pushed off the ball on the defensive side. We saw Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, in the last 2 weeks, they've been rushed on 500 yards by the Saints and the Ravens. And even going back to last year, the Packers did the same thing. The Bills did the same thing to them. And really the Lions did as well, if that game wasn't so fluky at the end. But this is just alarming. And how many of these games, and what is the Cowboys' signature? They beat up on the bad teams, the tomato cans, whatever you want to say. But, this division, which they dominate, the Commanders and the Giants, those teams look better. I'm not saying they're still not going to beat those teams, but it's going to be a harder game. Those games are not going to be pushovers, like we talked about with the Commanders being a better team with Jayden. And the Giants, Malik Neighbors invigorating that offense, and they just look like a more professional team. Brian Burns had a really good game on Sunday. So this is not just your cakewalk, win 12 games and, losing the playoffs. They have tough games, like you mentioned, and they need to be forced to show us they can beat a legitimate team in order for me to believe in them. So I agree with you. No cap.
I think it's funny you signed Mike McCarthy to a 1-year deal in the offseason, and he's probably thinking in his head, this is my Jordan Last Dance documentary. Bring the cameras out. And it's just been awful for him and that defense. And so, we'll see where they go from here, but definitely a tough schedule going forward, Lewis. But I want to ask you, my Seattle Seahawks are 3-0 right now. No other team in that division has 2 wins. Cap or no cap, the Seahawks win the NFC West.
Laraib, I've been telling you, I've been very high on the Seahawks going into the year. And this team is just, it's a little confounding to me. So to answer your question, I'm still going to lean cap. Now, as much as I'd want it, you know what? No, screw it. No cap. The Seahawks are going to win the NFC West. You know why? Because 2 of the teams who were considered some of the preseason favorites, the 49ers and the Rams, are just beat up right now. I mean, the injuries are countless. And let's be honest, the 49ers, they just they don't really play that well in San Francisco, Laraib. I know you can attest to that, or maybe I'm completely off base here. I think I'm completely off base here. But look, I really liked what this Seahawks team has been able to do. Most notably, Geno Smith. He's looked extremely impressive through 3 games, just making all these tough throws. They have the weapons on the outside and they're utilizing them. And even last week, Zach Charbonnet, really effective rushing game. And I get it. It was against Skylar Thompson and the Dolphins, but that home field advantage is definitely something that is still extremely effective in a lot of these games, Laura. And, starting off 3-0, they still have some easy games left on their schedule. They still have the Giants at home. They still have, a beat up Rams team at home. They still have the Cardinals at home, all 3 of their divisional games at home. And you figure that if they can at least split with all the teams in the division and pick up some of these easy ones, and then maybe, you get some of these tougher games at home, you can be a 10-11 win team, Laura. And the way these, and I'll save the Cardinals for a second because I feel like you might want to hit on them. But the way I've seen the Rams and 49ers just get decimated by injuries. Now, they're still very talented teams, and I don't want to discount them. But I believe the Seahawks are just that step above with their health and with the talent on this roster. And I think they can sustain it for an entire season, Laura. So I'm going to say no cap. Seahawks win the division.
And I'm going to say, unfortunately, I'm going to have to say right now, I get to be the pessimistic Seahawks fan for once. I'm going to say cap. Now, yes, they have a 2-game lead in the division currently, but like you mentioned, it's about who they played. They played Broncos at home in Bo Nix's first start. Wasn't too impressive. Then you travel to the East Coast. I know it's a huge thing to travel from one coast to the other coast, but you go OT against the Patriots team, and then you're at home and you beat Tim Boyle and you beat Skylar Thompson. Those are just wins that just are not impressive to me right now. And I see teams, these 49ers and Rams, whenever they match up, they play hard football against each other, no matter the level of talent. And like you mentioned, or you didn't mention, or are about to mention, the Arizona Cardinals played a tight game against the Detroit Lions, who I'm really down on, by the way. But, this division is always going to be competitive, and you can have a 3-game lead, a 4-game lead. I believe in every single one of these teams to bounce back. And right now, I still think the 49ers are the team to beat. Brock Purdy played a solid game. And if they're expecting Christian McCaffrey to come back this season, they're expecting Debo and George Kittle to come back. I still think this is their division. I need to see the Seahawks pick up a win on the road or at home against a big-time team. And I don't think we see that on Monday night. I'm not saying they win or lose, just against a big-time team.
Yeah, and I think Monday night is going to be a litmus test, right? Because I guess you're not high on the Lions. This is news to me. Maybe we'll have to get to that later. But in terms of just what is going to prove for the Seahawks, Monday night at the Lions, we've seen these two teams have very exciting, high-scoring games. So we know it's going to be a doozy at Detroit. But then you have Giants at home, 49ers at home. Laraib, if we're sitting here at 6-0, there's just no way we can bottle this. So I really do believe in the Seahawks. I just think the consistency is going to win them over and win the division. Now, I'm not saying they're going to be some elite playoff threat, but just the way they're able to get wins, I really like what Mike McDonald is on with the defense. They have a good secondary. And are there things to clean up? Yes, this is a young team. The number one thing that scares me is this offensive line. But if they're able to run the ball like they did against the Dolphins last week, Dolphins still have their players defensively. It wasn't Tua playing defense. So for what they were able to do running the ball, you're going to get Kenneth Walker back. That does give me some excitement going forward. Ryan Grubb still getting this new offense in. I do think the Seahawks have a path ahead of them to win this division. But let's go ahead, Laraib, and I have another cap or no cap. Sam Darnold, after throwing for 4 touchdowns last week, the Vikings are undefeated. By the end of the season, Sam Darnold will be a top 5 MVP candidate. Cap or no cap?
I'm going to say no cap. I mean, out of quarterback play that I've seen this year, besides Andy Dalton, who got his first start this year last week, and Josh Allen, of course, he has looked like the most good quarterback in the NFL, right? He hasn't put his team in positions to lose. He's just let the defense take care of most of the game, and he leads the league in passing touchdowns. Now, that's not too hard when you have Justin Jefferson on your team, but his ability from what people expected, I think he's definitely in play to be top 5, as long as he just doesn't start seeing ghosts on the field at some point in the season, I think he's in a great position, especially with how everyone else is playing in the NFL right now at the quarterback position.
Yeah, I feel kind of like how I felt about Brock Purdy last year with Sam Darnold right now. They're not asking him to do a ton, but he's still delivering on everything you ask him to do. Like you mentioned, he leads league in touchdown passes. He's just, getting in the flow of the offense. Kevin O'Connell's offense, really good head coach, and he's just making the right plays at the right time. Having Justin Jefferson is great, but Jordan Addison's been banged up and no TJ Hawkinson yet. And Aaron Jones just been running the heck out of the ball so far. So I am my expectations for him going into the season obviously have been shattered. I didn't think he'd be this effective. And now I can still look at this and say they're not asking him to do a ton, but he still has made some very impressive throws, Laura. That throw he made in week 2 to Justin Jefferson, that 97-yard bomb, was awesome. That's why he was this high prospect. And that's kind of like the thing with these reclamation projects at quarterback. The guys who had the talent just maybe needed some more time to mature, to learn behind some good offensive coaches and really get into it. Now, is this sustainable, Rob? Do I think he's going to maintain this? I'm going to say no. Now, if you remember in 2021, he was on the Carolina Panthers, and what was their record through 3 weeks, Rob?
I'm not
They
sure.
were 3-0. They were 3-0 in 2021, and everyone was saying, hey, Sam Darnold found his home in Carolina. He is back. And then they proceeded to lose the next 9 games, Laraib. So I'm going to need to see a little bit more. They still have the toughest division in the entire NFL. They have some harder games on their schedule. The only thing that's going to save him is this Brian Flores defense, Laraib. And I think they have been playing with their lights, with just fire. Brian Flores is cooking right now. What he's able to do to these Shanahan offenses, just confounding them with the Texans and the 49ers the past 2 weeks. It's been a sight to see for Brian Flores and the Vikings.
I think you need to give a little bit more credit to Kevin O'Connell. I don't think he's going to let Sam Darnold turn into a pumpkin in what was supposed to be a rebuild year. If he just continues, just coaching as he coaches, he turned Kirk Cousins into top 15 quarterback whenever he was in Minnesota. But as long as, Jalen Naylor has quietly really taken up that Jordan Addison role since he's been out, and they've been playing really good football. So continue to run the ball, continue to design for Justin Jefferson. And I still believe Sam Darnold can get it done because just quickly, top 5 in MVP, Josh Allen's up there, Patrick Mahomes is up there. Then who's your next guy on the docket? Is it CJ Stroud? Saquon, we're never in
TJ
our lifetime
Watt
ever going to see a defensive or anyone besides that quarterback when
Adrian Peterson won MVP in 2012.
Over a decade ago. I was still wearing diapers during that time, Lewis.
In this year of lower passing stats and just overall, just weirdness with offenses right now. If there was ever a year for a guy like TJ Watt or Saquon Barkley or some of these other non-quarterbacks to win it, it could be this year. But I just don't. You like Sam Darnold? I get it. I don't necessarily dislike him. I need to see more. That's all I'm going to say before I can commit to that. It's a long season, Laura. Eventually, some of these good quarterbacks are going to play good football, right?
Hopefully, Lewis. But let's go ahead and move on to our next cap or no cap. Cap or no cap. The 3-0 Chiefs will be facing the 3-0 Bills later this season in the AFC Championship.
No cap. I mean, these are by far the 2 best teams in the AFC. And you can say the Chiefs have not looked spectacular so far, but they're never going to look spectacular. They're just going to win games, Laura. They're just going to win, and they're going to piss people off, and they're going to get the stupid calls, and they're going to find ways to do it. They're just going to win. The Chiefs and the Bills, we talked about them earlier, most complete team in the AFC right now. They just look awesome. And if they can sustain this throughout, the AFC East, Miami's falling apart. The Jets have, picked up a really good win on Thursday, but I think there's no contest in either of these 2 teams' divisions. I think they're going to have high seeds. And I think the 1 and 2 seeds, they will be playing each other in the AFC Championship. No doubt about it. If this was plus money, I'd put a ton of money on it, Laura. But I think I'm going to look this up later to see what the odds are, but I'm expecting some good juice.
No, I have to completely agree. No one else in this AFC, minus the damn Steelers, are showing the world that they are able to compete with these two teams and deserve to be in the AFC Championship. The Ravens have looked humbled in the last 3 weeks. The Bengals are out. I mean, there's no one else that really just shows you, like, yes, we are the team to beat. And of course, it's going to be on the backs of Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, the 1 and 2 MVP candidates. And I think we will be seeing them in this championship game. And I know which way I'm leaning in this one.
And I can't wait for another Mahomes jersey in my closet. But let's go ahead. Let's move to our final cap or no cap. Malik Neighbors, Leak, as some call him, has been going crazy so far to start this season and totally revitalized this Giants offense. Cap or no cap, Malik Neighbors will win Offensive Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one nice and short and sweet. Cap. After Puka last season, who couldn't do it, there is no way in hell Malik Neighbors does it this year with Daniel Jones as his quarterback.
There's something about aura, Laraib, that I love Puka, but he's a nice guy. He's got the Polynesian hairdo going. He's a damn good football player. Don't get that mistaken. But something about Malik, just aura dripping off the screen whenever you watch him. It's just a sight to see. It's like I'm sweating watching him, just feeling it on the screen. Just the way he
Doing
can
what?
the way he can contort his body in the air to catch these contested balls, the speed, the contested catchability, just the route running so far. He has made Daniel Jones look like a good quarterback through 3 weeks of the NFL season. If they had a competent kicker, they'd be 2-1 right now. So I mean, this is just a story to watch. Jayden versus Malik, two college teammates at LSU battling out. But I do agree with you. Jayden Daniels is the favorite right now. All right, Laura, but let's go ahead and move on to our top 5 teams. We're just going to quickly go ahead and list them so far. A lot of change. And like we mentioned, not a lot of teams that have looked super impressive so far, Laura. So we'll start 5-1. And I'll have you go through and give me your 5. And in between, just give me a little explanation of each.
What 4-5? I'm going with the Philadelphia Eagles, who pick up a huge win against your Saints on the road. That defense really came to play, Lewis. And when that offense needed to move the ball, they got a lucky play at the end to get Dallas Goedert down the field. But no, that defense really showed out and really stifled that historic Saints offense that was going through the first 2 weeks. I think they're in a good position in a weak division as well. So give me the Eagles at the 5. Then at the 4, I'm going with your Pittsburgh Steelers. As much as I hate this team, I have to admit that defense is the best defense in the NFL. And this week, Justin Fields showed me something he did not show me in Chicago, and that was his ability to throw the ball in the middle of the field and deep down the field.
Calvin Austin.
Calvin Austin had 2 ridiculous catches to really ice that game against the Chargers. If Herbert finished that game, they were losing, by the way. But the Steelers unit, that defensive unit alone puts them in the top 5. At the number 3 spot, I'm going with the Minnesota Vikings, 3-0. Brian freaking Flores. If assistant coach of the year wasn't only for offensive coaches, he would be the assistant coach of the year. Too bad it's going to go to someone else. But he's been playing lights out on the defense side of the ball. His scheme has been incredible. Let me tell you something about this team, Lewis. They were up 24-7, I believe, in the fourth quarter, 2 minutes left. And they are calling timeout to make sure they get their defense adjustments in. I mean, this team is serious about football. And Brian Flores, who got fired in Miami for calling out Tua when we knew he wasn't him, now he is going to lead this Vikings team deep into this season, maybe not deep into the playoffs, but he will be a head coach next year for an NFL team. And that's why the Vikings are 3-0 and the number 3 spot. At the 2, give me Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. With Patrick Mahomes on your team, you're always going to be a top 5. Not much to say there, but they have looked human this year, I will say. And then at the number 1 spot, we already glazed him enough. Josh Allen and the Bills and Sean McDermott playing very good football this year.
Yeah, Laurent, I don't hate your list, really. Just a few disagreements here and there on the placement. But for the most part, we have 4 out of the 5 teams pretty much similar. I'll start with my number 5 team, Laurent. As you mentioned, my Pittsburgh Steelers. I would argue that the Steelers' defense is the best unit in all of football. I think their defense is better than the Bills' offense, than the Chiefs' offense, than the Vikings' defense. I think the Steelers' defense is that elite. And Justin Fields, mistake-free football, playing pretty solid so far. At number
You got to pick
4,
in that game, actually.
for them, I mean, you compare him to his Chicago days and to see what old boy in Chicago's doing right now. Clearly, it may have not been Justin Fields' fault, but they are playing very conservatively with him. Arthur Smith doing a pretty good job there so far. Number 4, Laraib, a team you did not have on your list. I have the Detroit
Oh,
Lions, Laraib.
boo!
This
Boo!
team, they have not been playing well, but you can't ignore the talent on this roster. The defense, what they're able to do against the run is just insane. Holding James Conner just like 15 yards, really bottling up Kyler Murray on the ground. This run defense is very potent, Laraib. And, the offense will figure itself out. They need to establish identity running the ball. We saw David Montgomery have a really good game. Jared Goff has not looked good so far this season, but give him time, give him some patience, establish the running game, hit these targets. Sam Laporta avoided serious injury last week. They need to get him more involved whenever he can come back. But they have the weapons. They just need to get all on the same page. The talent is there, Laraib. My number 3 team, you mentioned them, the Philadelphia Eagles. Just a ton of talent on this roster, Laraib. And that's why I was so confused about this defense. This defensive line is elite, at least in the middle. Jalen Carter balled out against my Saints last week. Jordan Davis is a threat there. And if they can get that pass rush working, they're really good against the run. And they can just snowball a team defensively. What concerns me is the secondary, but this offense, no A.J. Brown, he will come back. Devontae Smith left the game, and they still looked dynamic with Jalen Hurts in the pocket, with Dallas Goedert and Saquon Barkley, the biggest free agent signing of the last 20 years, Laraib. Bigger than Christian McCaffrey. Now, that was a trade, so that doesn't count. But I think it was that impactful for how it'll affect this season. And then number 2, the Chiefs. Number 1, the Bills. I was a little compelled to put the Chiefs at 1 just because they've won 9 games in a row. They just came off the three-peat. But I can't ignore how amazing the Bills have been playing. So that is my top 5 teams. Any remarks you want to say real quick? You had a little appalling response at my Lions pick.
I just don't like that team. Week 1, a competitive game against a decimated Rams team who they lost all those players most of those players in that game. Week 2, let the Bake Show march into town and just dominate you. And then week 3, you put up 20 points against the stinking Cardinals defense, right? Who you can't name anyone besides Budda Baker, who, by the way, left that game for a good portion of it.
Gardecki.
And the big thing is, Lewis, you hit on it. Jared Goff just has not looked good. Ben Johnson, who came back to this team as OC because he saw something special. Haven't seen anything special from him this year.
Our homework is learning the Cardinals defense, because I can't keep saying week after week we don't know anyone on this defense. Gardecki, he's been playing well. I don't know who he is or what position he plays, but I keep hearing his name whenever I watch the game. So shout out to him. And I think Zaven Collins was a top 10 pick, but he might be on the Commanders. But anyway, yeah, let's go ahead, Laraib, and let's wrap up this episode with a little Thursday night football preview. We have 2 teams we've been mentioning a lot in this episode. We have the New York Giants hosting the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas is a 4.5-point favorite at home, Laraib. Giants offense looking revitalized. You have Malik Neighbors really looking good. They finally got a kicker, so that wasn't a problem. And they pretty much dominated the Browns last week. And, I guess this is something both the teams have in common. They look like crap against everyone else, but they dominate the Browns. So what are you looking for here, Laraib?
I'm looking for the Cowboys to establish the run. If there's any game Zeke is going to feast, it's going to be in this one against the New York Giants, who let the Commanders run all over them with 100-year-old Austin Eckler or in week 2. This is the week the Cowboys get back on track, go 2-2, and then they really make themselves feel real good after beating a really crappy Giants team. And so give me the Cowboys in this one. I think, 3, you said 3.5. I think that's a little low.
4.5.
4.5. I think that might also be a little low. The Cowboys are going to show up in this primetime game against the Giants, and the Giants, can you keep on feeding the leak at the pace you are? I don't think so. Give me the Cowboys 28-17.
The X factor in this game, Laraib, Devin Motor Singletary. Obviously, we were talking about all these teams, how effective they are rushing the ball against the Cowboys. Can these guys keep it up? It's going to fall a lot on what do we see that worked again last week was the Lamar Derrick Henry RPO game. And I think if Daniel Jones can get out of the pocket, make some plays with his legs, Devin Singletary, they can be effective on offense, especially when you have a guy like Malik really stressing out the defense on the outside. They have to respect Malik on the outside. That being said, I can't quite get there. I wish I had a little more courage, but the Cowboys are a playoff team who've been in big games. They need this game. If there's any team that they ball out against, it is the New York Football Giants. So I am picking the Cowboys in this one. I think they score a touchdown late to make it seem a lot worse than it actually was. So I'm going Cowboys 31 to Dallas 17.
So the Cowboys beat the Dallases.
I have Dallas 31, Giants 17, excuse me.
All right. Well, that will wrap up this review of week 3. A lot of big games that we talked about, a lot of playoff teams that we talked about, Lewis. But if you want to give your take, go ahead and shout us down below in the comments. Let us know what you're feeling about a crazy week 3 in the NFL. And of course, on Thursday, we'll be posting our week 4 picks in the NFL. Lewis is up 2-1, but I've got a sneaky feeling that it is going to be 2-2 after this one. Lewis, anything to say before the First and Goal podcast signs off?
No, Laraib, that's all we got. Thank you so much if you made it this far watching, and go ahead and peace out.
Peace.